and welcome to the Religion and Popular Culture podcast, where we talk about religion, popular culture, and everything in between. It's been a while since we've had a normal straight into it opening.
It has, hasn't it?
I'm not talking about Love Island for 20 minutes before we get into the topic.
Oh, well, many people...
Yet?
Yeah, now many people are just going to switch this podcast off and not listen to the rest of it.
I know, if you want my Love Island hot takes, I don't know, you're going to have to message me because I'm not even tweeting about it. I've been watching them a little bit, delayed because basically that means that I don't have to watch it with ads if I watch it later on the ITV Hub. So I'm always, basically a day behind everybody else, which is fine, but every once in a while Twitter will spoil something for me because it won't stop showing me things whenever I log on to Twitter.
Yes, well, I saw something related to Love Island the other day that one of the, what are they known as, Islanders? Housemates?
Yeah.
That one of the Islanders had said something that I'm not going to quote on a recorded podcast, but I'll send you the tweet later.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on
but
this season.
It definitely made me raise an eyebrow, put it like that.
There's a lot going on. There's just a lot. There's a particular Islander who is just the definition of toxic masculinity and horrid treatment of women. That
I love that this has
there.
now slipped into an introduction about Love Island, by the way.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, Love Island. It's actually it's a really great show to watch. And I will preface it by saying, if you are going to watch it, it is possible to dislike people and not give them death threats. So,
what?
So, walk that line. If you're gonna watch it, you can dislike people. Don't tweet their families.
I take it that's been happening.
And there is... Yeah. There's a particular person who, apparently, because basically they always hand over their social media accounts to somebody to run while they're in the island. So that way they're tweeting about the show and stuff like that while they're there.
That.
And, it's normally a friend or a family member who's running it. And they're one of the people who's running one of the women's one has been going and finding information about each of the men that have been sending really horrid things to them and reporting them to their bosses or mothers and stuff like that to show this is what they're doing. And I love it. I'm all for it.
I love always to their mothers as well.
Because this is the range of people that you have going on there.
Now you're really in trouble.
But we're gonna go from something incredibly heteronormative to something incredibly not. And today we are talking about Orville Peck. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm gonna try when I upload this episode to also be inserting little snippets of Orville Peck songs, because this is a music one and I feel like it's really difficult to talk about music without listening to the music. It does mean I'm going to get a copyright flag on YouTube. I don't care. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube and you're not hearing any music, it's probably because I just trimmed it out in order to avoid any kind of issues. So go and listen to the podcast version if you are interested. But I'm going to try to do at least little snippets of it so you can get a vibe for the type of music that we're talking about and the beautiful sonorous voice that is Orville Peck. But before we get into it, Alan, I sent you a message a couple of days ago asking you if you've ever heard of Orville Peck. Your answer was no. Tell me about your journey into Orville Peck.
Okay, so since telling Vivian that I knew nothing about Orville Peck, she sent me 4 YouTube links to 4 videos. 2 songs from his first album and 2 songs from his most recent album. I thought this was really interesting. I'll put my hands up immediately and say I'm not a country guy. It's one of the very, very few genres that for some reason I just can't get on board with. And I think part of the reason is, and this is why I think Orville Peck was quite nice to watch and listen to, is I find a lot of country music quite conservative and so forth. Whereas this definitely isn't. This is on the other end of the spectrum. This is very gay and it's wonderful.
It's very
gay. So I watched these 4 videos and all 4 of these videos were meticulously thought out. particularly the most recent two from his most recent record, because there's clearly a concept going on here, and this is quite nice because this is one of those topics that, because I didn't know anything about Orville Peck, I'm going to get to learn all about him from Vivian in this episode. But the impression I was under is that there's a concept to these videos, there's a narrative, and I think there's more videos as well that I haven't seen that I will have to look up.
Yeah, so he's done, I think, like 4 or 5 for each album, and they're all really beautiful and very well done. I gave Aled Dead of Night and Nothing Fades Like the Light from Pony, which is his first album. And I gave him Daytona Sand and Curse of the Blackened Eye from his most recent album, Bronco.
No, Daytona Sands.
Did you listen?
Great.
I had a feeling you would like that one.
That one's very... That one's got a good...
Did you listen to all 4 of them?
I did my homework.
Okay. Well, I never know. Because did you do any other reading or anything about him, or did you just watch the videos and go, rad?
Okay, I did exactly what you told me to. I watched the videos before I did anything else.
Good.
But I was intrigued, so I did go and look things up. Like any true academic, I looked at his Wikipedia page. And now, the question I wanted to ask you, because I still know very little, are the records concept albums, or is it the videos that are conceptual?
My understanding is that the videos are conceptual, and there is a certain coherency to each of the albums. Yeah. So Pony, his first album, is very much about being gay. And most of the songs are about the gay experience and what it feels like and what that is like on all sorts of different levels of it, from when you're closeted to when you're out, and that kind of trajectory. I don't think it's a concept album in the fact that he really, tried to tell one story through it. The one story is being gay. Yeah. That's the story through it, but it's the thematic element of it. Bronco, to me, is much more an album about depression. And all the different sides of that and the different levels of that. Yes. And so that's, in that sense, they are conception albums, but I think they're more thematically conceptual. While then his music videos are amazing. If you're new to Orville Peck, sit down and watch his music videos, because they are very well done. They're very well thought out. And he does try really desperately to tell a really great story within them that ties to the concepts of the album as well as the concepts of his own life and the stories.
There's an amazing scene in one of the videos, one of the more recent ones, because there's definitely an improved budget with his more recent ones. There's an amazing sequence where he's dressed as a cowboy, by the way, which I'm sure we'll get to momentarily. Always. He's dressed as a cowboy, and he evades capture from the police. And did you guess that this is going to be my favourite bit?
I had a feeling.
He's being chased by police who are in their cars and sirens, but he's not running or going by car. He's on horseback. And
the lovely thing is that he talks to the horse first.
Yes, so he is escaping from the police who are chasing him in cars, but he's on horseback, dressed as a cowboy, and the whole thing is filmed really well. Like it's like watching an action sequence from a big budget action movie. It's great. Now, what I was going to say is I'm not a country guy, but I did enjoy this. I think the guy's got a hell of a voice.
Beautiful.
I was definitely gelling more with him when the songs had a little bit more drive than being a bit more mellow. I'm not really a very mellow person. But regardless, even during the mellow ones, what was happening on screen was interesting. Can we talk very briefly about his identity?
Yes. So
am I skipping ahead here?
No, you're fine. I was going to start by talking a little bit about Orville Peck as a person before we kind of get into an analysis, for lack of a better word, of Orville Peck. I was going to say relatively new to Orville Peck, but he's relatively new on the scene. I did hear songs from Pony. I knew Pony. I quite liked it. It's very ballad heavy. And I find you kind of have to be in a particular mood to listen to Pony.
That's how I felt with those early songs, yeah.
When I sat, his recent album, so Pony came out in 2019. Bronco, his second album, literally just came out like in April of this year, of 2022. And I actually sat down to listen to it like a week or two after it came out, and I didn't even realize he had put out a new album because I wasn't super following Orville Peck. And because I was like, maybe I'm in a vibe to listen to some Pony. I'll put it on the background while I'm doing some writing. And I saw that he had a new album out, so I put that on immediately. And I fell in love with Bronco. I like Bronco way more than I liked Pony. I really vibe with Bronco, but I don't know how much of that is because I can connect much more with being depressed than I can with being a gay man. But I do still really there's a lot of really beautiful lyrics and works in Pony, that I do really love very much. But Bronco, I absolutely love Bronco. Aled and I, we were doing a, album book club type thing.
Which I keep meaning to check in with you on, yes.
Yes. We put it on hiatus for a lot of reasons and we just haven't gotten back to it. And I was going to give you guys Bronco to listen to when it came up for me. But I was very also hesitant to do it because I know that I'm probably the only one that would have really understood where country music came from. I don't know how much, say, Gareth, for example, listened to country music. But when we talk about country, there's a couple of different levels of country. And I think a lot of people who listen to contemporary country think of it as that bro country, which is the way that I've heard it often described as bro country, where it's kind of trying to be pop and hip hop, and it's all very heteronormative, very hyper masculine.
I hate my
very
wife.
Conservative.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very like that. And old school country, like Dolly Parton, like Johnny Cash, has kind of fallen away. Orville Peck is much more like that old school. So if you're going into it because you like country, think of it in that
One of the
aspect
lyrics
of it.
in the songs you sent me references Johnny Cash by name in a bit of a pun way.
It does, yes.
I can't remember the lyric, but I that struck me, yeah.
Get a high, spend Johnny's cash, hitch another ride.
So Orville Peck, what we know of Orville Peck is that he is born in South Africa. He is now based in Canada, so lives in Canada now. And he is a country music star. So it's kind of this weird amalgamation of locations and areas. He's not from America or the American South, but he definitely carries country music quite well. He is also openly gay. We've already kind of talked about it, but you cannot really talk about Orville Peck without talking about his sexuality, because it is, as I said, it's basically all of Pony is about being openly gay. He is openly gay, talks very freely about it. He's done a music video with Trixie Mattel, who's a drag star, so he's very connected to the LGBT community. Very open about it. A lot of his songs reference being gay and doing that. And now I mentioned what we know about Orville Peck because he has a very specific look to him. Mm-hmm. He is always dressed in very classic cowboy attire. He's always got kind of jeans on. He sometimes is wearing just like, in America we call them wife beaters, but they're like, just like a white tank top.
Yeah. What Bruce Willis wears in Die Hard.
Yeah, I think here it would just be a white vest.
A white vest.
Which is a very different vibe than a wife beater.
That is a much more tasteful way of describing this attire.
So wherever you're from, that's what it is that he wears. But he'll sometimes also wear like a super bedazzled, very like rodeo-esque cowboy shirt as well sometimes, that I quite love. And he always wears a mask that has fringes that come down and hide his face. There's one music video for Let Me Drown, which is an amazingly beautiful song on Bronco, where he actually has taken the fringes on his mask and tied them like behind his head so you can see his mouth while he's singing. But he always has a very fringed mask on, and he hides his identity. I say he hides his identity. There's quite a lot of conversation about who he is, and it's pretty much known who he is, that he used to be in a punk band,
which I would like
and
to hear.
he switched. Yes, that he switched to, and it's a very well-known punk band. I didn't know them, but I was reading his, like this one article about it and all the similarities between them and stuff it's basically the same thing. And my husband recognized, he was like, oh, like an actual punk band. Like I have heard of that punk band. So a very well-known punk band. But Orville Peck prefers to keep his identity a little bit more hidden because he has mentioned in interviews that he's very shy. He doesn't really like to be on stage and everyone looking at him and thinking about him and writing about him and all of that other aspect of fame that goes along with it. He just kind of wants to write music and perform the music, and that's what the focus should be on. And so that's why he wears a mask. And part of that conversation was also a conversation about authenticity. And he was saying that country music, and what he really loves about country music, is that it is all about telling an honest, authentic story about your life. And part of the mask is actually being really authentic to his identity, which is a really fascinating concept that we're going to dig into in this episode, because I think that's a really fascinating aspect. But yeah, so if you're looking at him, he's always got that very classic, his main thing is he's a gay cowboy with a fringe mask and a bedazzled shirt. He is very gay.
He is very gay, yes. I was telling my wife about him when we were in the car this morning.
I was going to say, I think Toria would really like him.
Yes. My wife loves all things gay, and she was definitely intrigued by this Orville Peck character. I would definitely be interested to check out his punk roots, because I'm definitely more of a punk guy than I am a country guy. That being said, I enjoyed these songs a lot more than I enjoy a typical country. It is interesting what you're saying about those divisions, just on a side note, because I am much more inclined to enjoy some Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash than I am I'm from Texas and I hate my wife kind of country music, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That sort of country music repels me. But, Johnny Cash's version of 9 Inch Nails is Hurt. Yes, please. That's great. And, of course, anything by Dolly Parton, including the Moderna vaccine, which I've had. For people who don't know, she partly funded the Moderna vaccine.
I do love me some Dolly Parton. She's just an amazing human in all aspects of her life.
I will let you get back onto this topic in a moment, but have you seen her Glastonbury set from 2014?
No, I don't watch live sets.
Okay, okay. Well, you have to watch this, because she did at Glastonbury on the Sunday afternoon. There's the legendary tea time slot where they get a legendary artist on the big stage at tea time, and it's one of those artists that everybody knows all the words to their biggest hits. So you'll get people like Meatloaf, Madness, I think it was Diana Ross this year, Lionel Richie, that kind of thing. And in 2014 they had Dolly Parton, and I think she still holds the record for the largest Glastonbury crowd at her set. Anyway, she was ace. You should watch it.
I will do. Well, I think maybe it might be good to start with the conversation around country music and the idea of the authentic self and the mask and stuff like that. How did you obviously found the vibe of at least Daytona Sand a bit more akin to it. Did you look much into the lyrics or think much about what he was saying or anything like that.
Yes, there was
Out of
definitely I was definitely picking up on depression, and again, I don't know if that's because I can relate more to that than I can being a gay man. So particularly with the other two songs, even though it was clear that, you know, the experiences of being a gay man were feeding into those early songs. With the other ones, I can't remember if it was the first one of the new songs or the second one of the new songs, but he is essentially being followed by a double of himself, one of the newer ones, because it was clearly an allegory for depression and that side of oneself that one might even hate, or that side of oneself that you're ashamed of, or who reminds you of certain things, something that holds you back. That dual personality that people with depression can often have in terms of presenting yourself as one type of person to the world, but then on the inside you're a very different type of person. So, you know, you could present yourself as being happy and content and so forth, but then in your private life it could be very different. And maybe I was looking too deep into it in that sense, but I was wondering if there was like a social media commentary as well, that you always present your best side on social media and you don't present yourself on a bad day. So, you know, your selfies look great and you share that this lovely thing has happened to you. It's that dual personality that you often have in an online space. I don't necessarily think that's what he was going for there, but I think something with music for me is that you often take away from it what you bring to it. Maybe I brought that and took that away.
Yeah, and I think my understanding of Orville Peck is that he would be happy with people reading their own experiences into it and finding something in that. So even when he puts statements out there of, well, this is what I mean, I think he's very happy for people to take what they need from his songs. For me, that same exact song, Curse of the Blackened Eye, was about being in an abusive relationship, and particularly about the post being in that relationship, and how it creeps up on you and how it's kind of always there when you start going into, you know, new relationships, and how that kind of follows you around in that shame of which you should not feel shame for, but you do, unfortunately, and how that follows you around from place to place as well.
That's interesting.
So,
yeah.
I mean, maybe that was also partly from the title of it being The Curse of the Blackened Eye being, you know, a bit more of an on-the-nose thing about abuse.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful line in that particular one of, it ain't the letting go, it's more about the things that you take with. Which I think regardless of whether we're talking about relationships or depression, that is a huge thing that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think part of this really feeds into this conversation about country music as being an authenticity of the self and a storytelling of the self, a way of presenting yourself. And it's always been ripe for stories about loss and love and grief and pain. I mean, we mentioned Dolly Parton. You just listen to, pick a Dolly Parton song at random, and there you go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe that's why I haven't particularly got into country over the years, is that I usually like songs about characters and songs that are very much a story about a specific character, and you know, you can relate to it in certain ways, but it's definitely not somebody sitting on a bar stool saying, I've gone through this really rough time and now I'm going to tell you about it through the medium of song, which is perfectly valid, by the way. That's not a criticism on my part. But that's definitely the vibe of a lot of country, isn't it? That autobiographical side. And I got the impression that Orville Peck is definitely telling a story, an autobiographical story.
Yes.
Even if then some of it is obviously very, you know, conceptual and thematic, like being chased away by police on horseback. and stuff like that. You know, that's not meant to be taken literally. There's a metaphor going on there. There's that was just great. That's really stuck with me, as you can tell.
It's a fun Daytona Sand is a very fun music video because there's also a scene of him going to like a bar and then laying on top of a pool table and like and like doing a weird dance thing to like disrupt the pool that's happening at the pool table. It's hysterical.
Yeah, that kind of looked to me like he was trying to cheese off some straight guys.
Oh yeah, I think
there were some heteronormative guys doing heteronormative things, and then he just came in and did him for the sake of being provocative. Again, it was great. Yeah. That was definitely the standout for me, I have to say.
Yeah, I think that what is really fascinating about Orville Peck is that he's at least one of the first, if not the first. I didn't go into really detailing this out, but really openly gay country music singer, which is really fascinating because as I was listening to Pony the first time, it really struck me of why isn't there more LGBT people in country? Because this country style, that idea of telling the authentic story of your experience and connecting that narrative through narratives of other people is just ripe for the LGBT community. It feels like those ideas of loss and love and grief and personal pain and the feeling on the outside from society is, it just feels like it should be there and it should have been there for years. And it feels so natural to be listening to Orville Peck songs about it and feel that in there. And it just feels like it's always been there. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm taking this and putting my own spin on it. It feels like it's just this natural puzzle piece that fits within everything that's already existed. Which I quite like. Sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just wondering, do you think that country has been dominated by conservatism and perhaps right-wing personalities that have then prohibited gay artists from flourishing in that genre?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think that there's also a certain amount of, there's a lot of that in everything, because there's also been a new push of Black country music singers in recent years, which is very new. And the fact that there's an entire genre of music which is only now having people of color singing in it is a huge demonstration of where it was and how people understood it. I think there has always been a bit of a fear in country music of that white, heteronormative, conservative Kentuckian that will then, well, now I'm not gonna listen to anybody on this record label because they put a gay man on it or put a Black person on it or whatever. And I think that there probably is still quite a lot of that because, as I said, Orville Peck's not exactly bro country, you know? I mean, granted, I think part of that is because his voice is just so made for this type of country. It is just an absolutely gorgeous voice. But it also is probably a lot to do with the fact that that kind of old school country will be more willing to accept him than the bro country. I.e., contemporary country is less likely to accept. But I think what's really interesting is that a lot of his music really isn't about I was gonna say isn't about acceptance, but it kind of is, but it's kind of not. That's not why he's doing this, if that makes sense.
No. But did you read the comments on his videos?
No. I mean, I have seen a lot of the Orville Peck community. The people who really like him. I'm sure there are comments of people who do not like him on those videos.
Fortunately, because I didn't scroll through too many, I saw the comments that have been upvoted and they're positive.
Okay, good.
The reason I mention this is because a lot of those comments were about acceptance. But about acceptance of the person writing the comment, not of Orville Peck. And so someone said, I'm paraphrasing, but someone said something along the lines of, I don't know if the music is about being gay or being depressed or just being friends with a horse, but I love it. And but there were plenty of other ones of people saying that, they'd found this music uplifting, but they'd also found this music relates to them and so on, and help them come to terms with things. Sometimes comment sections like that can be a really interesting gateway into seeing. Obviously, YouTube comment sections can be hellscapes, but
oh yes,
but there was something quite uplifting about the comments on these videos. I have no doubt that if you scroll down to the bottom of the barrel, there's some I'm awful ones.
I'm absolutely sure, but I'm glad that they were not at least at the top, which is good for other people who are scrolling through the comments,
wanting to connect with fans.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I really loved about I was on his subreddit, and which Reddit is another place of you could go either way. With
often the other way, sadly.
People are going to be.
Yeah.
And there was somebody on there, which also kind of relates to our pilgrimage fan convention conversation. There was somebody who's going to an Orville Peck concert, and they wanted to live out their bimbo cowgirl fantasy, and that is a direct quote. But they were worried that they would kind of stand out too much, and they would be a bit, they wanted to not stand out too much and not seem weird if no one else was in costume and things like that. And all the comments were so supportive of being like, you be your bimbo cowgirl self, like. And another one saying, you're going to a concert of a gay man who wears bedazzled cowboy shirts and a fringed mask. I don't think you're going to stand out that much. And basically everyone kind of talking about how embracing the fan base is and how everyone kind of shows up a bit weird, and some people are wearing huge things for the LGBT community, and other people are kind of doing their own thing about it. And so it does seem like this really lovely community of acceptance as part of the kind of wider LGBT movement of drawing more people in, and also showing a different side of being gay. As much as he also likes to point out the very the ways that people now, I think, typically conceive of being gay. He's like, in one of the music videos I gave you, there's people watching Drag Race on their phones and stuff while they're doing things. So there's obviously that side of the gay community that's being recognized, but there's also this guy who, he doesn't present as super hyper femme, he's actually quite a bit built. He's got tattoos. He's got a really deep, sonorous voice. He's dressed like a cowboy. And he's just as gay as the drag queens, and I think it helps to demonstrate a different side of the community, as much as he also bedazzles his shirts and wears Versace cowboy outfits and stuff like that, But there is a certain amount of that. And I think this is where I kind of wanted to go with talking about Orville Peck, because a lot of people might be listening to this wondering, okay, where's the religion? Because this is the Religion and Popular Culture podcast. And of course, we would say that everything is religion, and so it doesn't really matter. But I wanted to specifically talk about a thing that I love very much, which is mythology. And particularly the idea of reworking mythology and altering mythology. And there's a really wonderful re-mythologization that is happening in Orville Peck of the cowboy myth. And I call it the cowboy myth for a couple of reasons, both on the standpoint of the way that it is typically used in contemporary usage of the word myth, as well as the way that I would use the word myth, which is that these are cultural narratives of what it means to be a cowboy, or how cowboys actually were back in the Wild West days, and how that the way we have come to understand it in our contemporary understanding is slightly different to how it actually was historically. And that is a really interesting thing, that the cowboy narrative has been really altered for a lot of the type of country, the bro country that we've been talking about, that very heteronormative, white, conservative, country idea has taken the cowboy era and transformed it to be this white nationalist story of the white person who is standing between the immigrant communities or the indigenous communities and the white communities. And it is their triumph that has led to the society and the culture that we live in America now. Which, of course, is a very different view than what history has to tell us about cowboys. And I don't want to focus on that aspect of the change of mythology and the establishment of that myth, because that's a kind of a different story. But what we do see in Orville myth is, in Orville's mythology of the cowboy, is taking that story of the cowboy and shifting it again. And he is seeing this idea of the Wild West and how cowboys were pushed to the fringes of society. They were pushed to the outskirts. They weren't in the Wild West because that's also where society wasn't. And he sees being LGBT as that same idea of being pushed outside of it, and therefore being gay makes him a cowboy. And I find this part of him so fascinating. It's really, because there's I can't remember if it's in one of the music videos that I gave you, but one of the music videos starts with Orville Peck standing in front of another guy dressed as a cowboy, and I think it's a person of color as well, who is like tying up a tie or something on Orville, and it's kind of static, and it's just this still image of them, and it's actually replicating an old image of the gay cowboy, where it's two naked cowboys standing facing each other, and obviously in the music video they're not naked, but it is recalling that image. And I might make I probably can't make that image the album artwork for this particular podcast episode, because there is a lot of dong on display in that original image. But I'll do the Orville Peck one, and maybe I'll link to the original artwork if you haven't seen it. But there's a lot of very active recalling to cowboy myths in Orville Peck's works, and I think that's really fascinating. That change of myth. And of course there's also the other myth that's going on, which is the myth of Orville Peck himself. Yes.
Now this reminded me of a couple of things. Firstly, it reminded me of Chuck Tingle, who we discussed on our other podcast. What's interesting about the writer. And of course it reminded me of Banksy, who's one of the most popular pop culture figures with a secret identity. Who puts out works of art, and part of the allure of Banksy is not knowing who it is, and I think that's part of the allure of Orville Peck as well, because I've always been drawn to musicians who are visually distinctive, and he is very visually distinctive. And I was impressed with that sort of way. I think I'm drawn in by visually distinctive musicians, and it's definitely part of that appeal of, okay, well, you don't know who he is, and even though, okay, you could go digging online, and I read on the Wikipedia page that he said things about himself, like he said that he'd been in a West End play once, and they knew that this guy from this punk band had been in a West End play, and it all matches up, and so on and so forth. But I think that almost that almost sucks some of the enjoyment out of it.
Well, but what I find interesting is that we basically know who he is.
But you play along for the performance.
But that doesn't matter. Yeah, it's part of Orville Peck is that aspect of it. And as much as we basically know who he is, we play along with it and we kind of pretend along with it because that's part of Orville Peck, is to feed into his mythology of Orville Peck rather than his actual name. Because Orville Peck is his own person, as much as the songs that he's singing is also about his lived experience outside of the fringed mask. It still is also Orville Peck.
Yes, and I know I've said this a million times on this show before, but I'll say it again. If something's a performance, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not sincere. Performance can be sincere. In fact, it could be more sincere than something you would say isn't a performance. And what you were just saying about, people playing along because it doesn't matter reminds me of the episode that we did on the Church of the Subgenius, where everyone in the Church of the Subgenius knows it's a joke. They know it was made up by two guys. They know it's satire, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is that they are part of the Church of the Subgenius, and it's what being part of the Church of Subgenius means to them. Knowing that it was created by two guys in the 70s, knowing that it's a joke, that's inconsequential. In fact, knowing that almost makes it even better.
Yeah.
Because it adds to it. And I think that's the case with Orville Peck, is that idea of presenting himself, or his true self, without the, okay, so I'm this guy who was in this punk band, and I was this guy who was in this West End play. No, it's just, I'm Orville Peck, and now I'm going to tell you the story of who I am. It doesn't have the baggage of other things you may already know about him, or preconceived ideas of who he is.
Yeah. He just is Orville Peck. And I love this play of authenticity and identity along with the hiding of identity and authenticity. And it really shows how much we love stories and how much the stories are what we see as being authentic more than the things surrounding the story. Like, the person telling the story, i.e. Orville Peck, is kind of second to the story that he's telling. But I think this is something that Orville Peck has really figured out. And by making his own character, for lack of a better word, it's a character, but it's also him, right? It's, like you said, it's a type of performance that doesn't make it fake to him. But it's also a different version of him that is purely him. And it's this really complicated conception of reality that means that the focus is so much on, well, what is he saying? And what is he presenting us? Well, he's presenting us a gay cowboy who's doing a country music about being depressed and gay, and I'm down for
because
it.
It doesn't have the baggage of who he is in other bands and stuff like that. Yeah,
and no one's going, well, in this band's song, he talked about that. Is that the same thing? Is that a hint to him being gay back in the day of... And it's like, who cares? This is about Orville Peck. And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know how much I love when musicians play with identities anyway. And present different versions of themselves. So I think you knew that
wonderfully.
You were playing towards my...
I actually discovered Orville Peck through a YouTube channel of artists that I watch. And they were doing... I can't remember what the prompt was. But they were basically... One of them did a fan art, essentially, of Orville Peck. So he drew Orville Peck kind of in mid-dance with the fringe moving. And you know how, I'm sure you saw it in the music videos, Orville Peck has a very strange dance style that is very, it kind of is, white dad dancing, but also very fluid and nice to look at the same time. It's a very strange dance style, but I quite like it. But they got him in kind of mid, kind of up movement, and with the cowboy hat and the fringe moving. And I was just like you, I was like, wow, this image is so startling, of this guy in this fringe mask and wearing this cowboy outfit and dancing. And they were talking about how gay he was and how wonderful that is. And I was like, well, now I gotta figure out who this guy is. And it was amazing how much the image of Orville Peck led me to a different type of image of Orville Peck, which is that kind of musical image of him.
Yeah. The way an artist presents themselves visually is just as important as the music. There seems to be this idea among some of the old musos in particular that it's not about how you look, it's about the sound, man. And it's like, no. The look is part of the performance when you're performing live, for example. It is part of the way you are presenting your music. Look is, and this doesn't mean that I think people should be attractive. I'm not saying they should be attractive. I mean, they should be visually striking. To me, that's exciting pop music. So yeah, I was instantly on board with that. Is this the channel that you sent me when they were drawing Muppets?
Yes.
That was, I can imagine that being really good. They're really talented artists.
Yeah. And so one of them did an Orville Peck one that was, to me, it's one of the best ones that particular, I mean, they're all very, very talented, especially compared to me. But it's one of my favorites that artist has done is that Orville Peck. If I could get that framed on my wall, I totally would. But I very much love it.
Does Orville Peck tour the UK?
I don't think he has yet, but he also released Pony in 2019.
So he's fresh on the scene.
So he's fresh on the scene, and a couple of years of that was COVID, which is what I was kind of starting to lead to as well. So I don't know if he will. If he does, we can try to book tickets to go see him together.
This is what I was going to suggest, because I've said this before, I don't think you've seen enough live music. So I am not a big fan of going to see live music, but I would go see Orville Peck with you. You would go and see... Okay, cool. I will track him on Last.fm, and if he announces any dates, I will let you know.
Okay, definitely.
Okay, that'll be good. That'll be a good time. And then what we'll do is we'll go to the show, and then we'll report back on this podcast. So it'll be like a double whammy. It'll be a good night out, and it'll be research purposes.
I mean, everything is always research purposes. This is how I live my life.
Everything is always research purposes. That is
everything is data. Always.
Indeed. So yes, we will do that. I'll keep an eye on his tour dates.
So, out of curiosity, I know that you are not much of a ballad fan, which is one of the main reasons why I was hesitant to give you Orville Peck, because he is a bit more slow often. Out of the 4 songs that I gave you, would you keep listening to Orville Peck?
If you hadn't sent me Daytona Sands, I'd think, I really admire what he's doing, and he's clearly really good at it, but I don't think I'd put a record on, especially without the visual side to look at.
Mm-hmm.
But Daytona Sands was really good. If there's more songs like that, then I'm the sort. It's not that I don't like. It's not that I don't like ballads. I do like ballads, but I like my music to be quite abrasive, and the first 2 songs in particular, I didn't find that abrasive, but his videos are very abrasive, and I really like that. Yeah, abrasive to me is a good thing.
I find the idea that what he is doing is abrasive.
Yeah,
and therefore
absolutely.
I find his music is abrasive in the sense that it is, as I said, it's kind of transforming this typical narrative that has been socially embedded.
And it's sticking the middle finger to a certain type of... It's almost taking a genre back.
It is, yeah.
From a certain audience, and
It's
and you know, I really admire that. I don't think I'd buy the LP and put the LP on my turntable if I didn't have the really cool videos and things, and him as a performer as well to watch. Unless there's more songs like Daytona Sands, then I would. So, long story short, I'm going to listen to both albums and I will report back to you.
Okay. Now, do keep in mind, Pony is very ballad forward.
You did say that, yeah.
I mean, even for me, it's quite ballad forward, and I love me a ballad. But I think the topics to me and what he's singing about is what keeps it feeling new in a way. Mm-hmm. I'm not used to hearing songs about being gay, because even outside of country music, it's not really something that you hear very often.
No.
And I really appreciate the fact that it's there and it's presenting it, and it's also presenting it in a way that even as someone who, I mean, I'm not straight, but I am kind of conception, I can still listen to and feel a certain understanding with.
Mm.
And I think that's really difficult to do, and I really appreciate it. Bronco is a lot more about depression and has some really amazing songs on it. And of course, Daytona Sand, I gotta always love a song that is about how much you hate being in Florida. It's just what I love. It's that I can connect to that more than anything else.
That's definitely written for you, isn't it?
Gotta love a song about Florida and how much you hate it and want to be completely somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will go and see him live. And who knows, I may even wear a cowboy hat. Why not? You've got to dress for the occasion, you know?
So you would buy a cowboy hat specifically to see Orville Peck?
Well, I'm disappointed that you didn't assume that I already had done. I don't. I used to.
Yeah. Okay, I was about to say, I think I know you well enough to know that you don't. You have a fedora, but you don't have...
Okay, in my defense, I haven't worn the fedora in years. And I bought the fedora. How do you even know about my fedora?
You just strike me as someone who would have a fedora.
Okay.
Not in a you know, some people wear their fedoras on the inside. I don't think you're one of those.
I bought a fedora purely because I once went to the hairdresser and had a really bad haircut. And I was so bothered by it that I literally bought a hat. I didn't even know it was a fedora. I just saw a hat and bought it. Because it was just way too short and I don't do short hair. And I wore a hat for a few weeks because I was so mortified. I've changed a lot nowadays. I just wouldn't care. So I do own that. And I used to have a couple of sombreros because they had little tassels around them and they were fun.
Okay.
Mm. See? Yeah. I'm just full of surprises.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a couple of sombreros. I used to have a cowboy hat when I was younger. I think I even threw the fedora out. Especially after I told my friend that I bought this hat. And he said, please tell me it's not a fedora. And because I know nothing of fashion, I just looked at it and I thought, it's a hat. So I turned to Tori and I said, is this a fedora? And she said, yes. But, okay, now I know that you think that I am not someone who wears my fedora on the inside. That's interesting.
No.
I'll have to... I'm going to spend the afternoon thinking about whether that's an insult or a compliment. I imagine the former.
If you wore it on the inside and the outside, I probably would not be friends with you.
Okay. I still don't know where I stand right now, but I'll figure it out. That's okay. Rest assured that I haven't worn it in many years.
Well, if people want to contact you and tell you about fedoras, as well as country music, gay country music that you would love, where can they go?
Well, come and find me on Twitter at AlaJLL and hopefully we'll see Orville Peck live soon, and I will share a couple of photos from his set on my Twitter page.
Okay.
Because that'll be a lot of fun. I'm going to keep an eye out on this. I want the experience of being in the room. Because part of the experience of being into an artist is the vibes. And that's where you pick up the vibes. And Vivian, where can people come and find you to talk to you about gay cowboys?
Come and talk to me about cowboys, gay cowboys in particular, all the time. Every day. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. I am at Vivian Asimos on both, and you can check out my website, incidentalmythology.com. And I'm actually planning on writing a blog post about Orville Peck soon. So, that might also be out. So, yeah, go check that out. We'll be talking about mythology and masks, because I've been doing a lot of work on costumes. So, of course, I've got to talk about masks.
Yeah, and Orville Peck, if you're listening, free tickets to your next UK show, please.
Yeah, I'm sure Orville Peck is listening, but I guess if you are, please don't take down our copyright, because I'm going to be inserting some music into this.
Yeah, absolutely, and we will come and see you live. It'll be a good time.
Yes. Well, thank you for listening, Orville Peck, and also thank you for chatting with me, Alan, and indulging my need to talk all things Orville Peck right now, because Bronco is amazing.
That sounds
Go
good.
listen to Bronco, everyone. Just do it.
I am going to check this record out.
Well, I'll let you get to it. Bye!
Bye, folks.